Okay, very good. So I'm just going to run through the course of this evening how the theory modules and actually the practical modules as well work together, and where sort of module 1 sits. Have a think about how this study group will work, give you a little bit of an introduction to the online examination system that BBKA have used for the last 5-6 years, and sort of generally just give a broad introduction to the examinations. And you can join the group. There's absolutely no commitment to take the exam at the end. If you're not keen to do so, you can just join.
Probably do,
please,
yeah.
Please, can you put your mics on mute if you're just joining? Thanks very much. There's absolutely no obligation to take the exam. If you just want to come here for the learning, you're equally welcome. But if you're keen to take the exam, be it the first one, be it the third or fourth, whatever number it is that you're up to, please, you're equally welcome. And we want everybody to be able to enjoy it and to learn from it. Okay, so couple of golden rules. In fact, there's 6. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could keep your speaker on mute unless you're speaking, and that's probably going to be more sort of in the coming weeks rather than tonight. If you've got questions, rather than asking them out loud, if you could whack them into the chat facility that you'll find at the bottom of your screen, then you will hopefully get the question answered either later this evening or subsequently. If you have experience problems with your Zoom call, maybe the picture doesn't go well or the sound is poorly, that might just be your internet connection. Turning off your picture might help. Importantly with these groups, and the way that the reason why these groups work so well is that everybody respects everybody. Okay, we acknowledge that we have a range of knowledge and experiences that join us. So please, respect everybody for their knowledge and their experience. And the most important rule really is to enjoy the study group. Okay. Can you all see, I'm just going to say, can you all see the slide that says aims of this evening? Can you see that? Yeah, you can. Great. It's okay. Because I've been known to try and just carry on wittering and then have the main screen left behind. Okay, so we've done some introductions. We're going to chat through the examinations and the assessments, how we might run the study group, some resources to help you, some important dates if you are planning to take the examination. Okay, and there's probably a few other things that I've thrown in since I compiled that AIMS slide as well. You'll have to excuse my throat. I've actually not had a bad throat, but I have had a bit of a cold over the last week. So if you can't hear me, I will try and speak up. Don't normally have an issue. Okay, so in front of you, you should have a slide that shows the link between the different theory modules, okay, of which there are 7 compulsory ones. There is no module 4 currently, but there is a supplementary module that was introduced 2 or 3 years ago. that module doesn't form part of becoming a master beekeeper, but it's there for sort of learning. So you can see the theory module examination subjects. So module 1, which we're just about to embark on, is called honeybee management, right through to module 8, honeybee management, health and history. You can take modules 1 to 7 in any order you want. And I always recommend people don't start with module 1, although I did myself, and I'm sure a number of others have as well. And in fact, I think BBKA are planning to remove the module numbers because it implies that you start with number 1 and you work through, whereas you don't actually have to do it in that order. When I started modules back in 2013, the basic assessment was a requirement or a pre-requirement to taking any of the modules or practical assessments. That no longer applies. And that was done so that people could just take the theory modules if they wanted to do so as a learning exercise. There are a number of other practical assessments. So the basic assessment, a number of you on the screen have already done last summer and before, I'm sure. Then there is the General Husbandry Certificate, which is a practical assessment which takes place over the period of a morning or an afternoon with 2 examiners that go to your bees. It's quite a big step from the basic assessment. So back in 2018, BBKA introduced the Honeybee Health Certificate. That has had a lot of uptake in a number of other counties, not in Hertfordshire, interestingly, but that's something for us to think about going forward. There is also a microscopy certificate, honeybee breeding certificate. Again, aren't compulsory as part of the process of becoming a master beekeeper, but they're there as sort of supplements. When you have attained modules 1 to 3, plus one other from 5, 6, or 7, you can call yourself a qualified beekeeper. And then when you have completed all 6, plus module 8, plus the advanced husbandry certificate, then you can call yourself a master beekeeper. The advanced husbandry certificate takes place over a day. It is held in the Midlands at BBKA headquarters, so with bees that you've not experienced before. And there's lots and lots of different sections. But it would be lovely to think that somebody sitting around their computer this evening will go on to complete that. Because as I mentioned right at the beginning, there are only 2 master beekeepers in Hertfordshire, and it would be lovely to add to our number. Okay, so just a brief introduction to the examinations and assessments. So the theory modules. So in terms of the theory modules, each of them have a syllabus and all have about 32 to 36 sections. And in theory, the examinations, which are held twice a year in March and November, each examination for each module covers all of the sections. And the written exams, which generally are performed online nowadays, are 100 minutes in duration. And they're split into 3 groups. So they're split into section A, which is a single word or a phrase as an answer. There are 10 of those, and the aim is that you answer all of those. 1 mark each, total 10 marks for that section. They are sort of really meant as a warm-up session. Section B, it says type of answer, short paragraph or two, but actually they're looking for bullet points. And because if you're not careful, those 100 minutes disappear really quickly. And we'll come back to the timings in future weeks, because that's really important that you stick to the timings for each of the sections. But in section B, you have 5 questions to choose from, and you have to do 4 of those. And there are 15 marks per question, giving you a total of 60. And then section C is an essay style, although, again, I think you can get away with bullet points. It's the detail that they are looking for. There are 2 options. You have to select one. There are 30 marks for that question, and giving you a total of 30 and a grand total of 100. So from those 100 marks, you need to get 60 to pass the examination, 70 to obtain a merit, and 80 to obtain a distinction. And we have an extremely good track record of merits and distinctions in Hertfordshire over the last year or two, which is great to see. But actually, all you need is 60% to pass it. So those exams, as I mentioned, are run twice a year. Your results from the March exam are published later in May, and the November exam results are published in January. And in fact, last November's exam results have just come out. I've seen on various boards people saying about their results. And actually, one of the things that the online system has done is speed up the process of marking quite significantly. And it must be really helpful to the examiners to be able to do that. Once you passed your exam, you'll get a certificate for each of the modules. Okay, so that's the structure of the exams. And here, and I won't sit on this slide particularly long, but here you will see some examples of the questions. So section A, you want to give yourself basically a minute per question, okay? 10 minutes only. Section B, 10 minutes per question, okay? So the bullet points. And each question in B and C, you can see in brackets at the end of the sentence a number, and that represents the number of marks for that particular part of the question, okay? And you have to take that into account when you are answering those questions, because you need to provide sufficient detail, so at least 10 points to think about getting those 10 marks for that question 14A in the middle there, or 5 points for question 14B, okay? And then similarly, section C, 1 from the 2, you can see the detail this question asked for was primarily in the first part of the question. So if you are spending 30 minutes on this question, you probably want to be spending 24, 25 minutes on that first part, and then the last 6 minutes on that second part there. And you will see over the coming weeks a lot of these questions, and this is very much how the study group operates, that we use the previous questions broken down according to what part of the syllabus they cover. So, unlike the basic assessment study group that we ran last year, I won't be teaching each part of the syllabus. So you will need to study additionally during the week if you want to take your examination in March or even in November. We will provide a WhatsApp group for questions and support. There are also Facebook study groups for each of the online modules, and I'm administrator for those, so you can be added to those very quickly if you're on Facebook. There is also a new resource from BBKA on the online, which is very new, and I've got a couple of slides on that in a minute. But that will also help us. This has only been launched in the last week or so. We will divide the syllabus of Module 1 into probably 9 weeks, and then leaving the last week, which is literally the week before the Saturday examination, for anything that anybody wants to cover. We will break into small groups, and Zoom allows us to do that. And then I will have sent out module exam questions from selected areas of the syllabus the week before. You will gain the most benefit by spending time with those questions, reading the references, the books, listening to the videos, etc., and trying to create an answer. And the sooner you try to get into the habit of writing those answers as you would in the examination, the better. We'll come back together the following week to discuss the answers. So I will send out the questions for next Tuesday evening tomorrow. So then we'll come back next Tuesday, split into groups to discuss answers and try to formulate a sort of an answer between each group. And hopefully with some time, we'll create some quizzes, etc., to make it a little bit more fun and engaging. But actually, the engaging part is being part of that small group and different small groups each week to learn from each other. So this is the schedule that I've pulled together, and you can see, so we are currently in week 1, and we're doing our introduction. So next week, we will do syllabus sections 1.1 to 1.3, and that covers these topics. So types of hives and frames commonly used in the UK, bee space, methods of beekeeping. And that methods of beekeeping, you'll see from the syllabus that it's in bold text. And that means that it was new for the syllabus that was introduced, or the revised syllabus that was introduced in 2023. Okay, so wherever you see on the syllabus bold text, it means it's been introduced with that syllabus. And they will have also dropped sections from the syllabus. So if we had been doing this in 2022, sections 1.1 to 1.3 included understanding and knowledge of historical aspects of hives and frames. So they have seemingly dropped that post 2023, at least in this module. It may well be in module 8 now, but it was for a period of time in the module itself. And then you'll see weeks 3 through to 9, we will cover the syllabus. And I've not written the syllabus out in detail here. I've just given a sort of a summary, but you will have got a link to the syllabus, and I'll include it in the paperwork so that you can look it back up again. Okay, so that will take us through February and into the early part of March. So lots of things to cover. And if lots of those things are new to you, don't panic. Okay, this is the whole point of doing this study group, is to help you learn, and hopefully by having this knowledge, it will help your practical beekeeping as well. Okay. So you may be panicking, thinking, I haven't done an examination since I left school, which was so many decades ago. It is possible to do, okay? It really is possible to do. But it tends to help you to be, to sort of get into some habits. So here are some ideas from someone who actually doesn't find examinations particularly easy. So these are things that work for me. Some things might work for you, some things might not, and you may have other things that that help you. Probably one of the most important things is finding a time of day that you can commit regularly. So is that, you know, after dinner when the children are in bed? Is it first thing in the morning when the rest of the house is still asleep? Whatever it is for you, try to dedicate a slot of time that you can commit regularly to go through questions, to do the reading, etc. Okay, and importantly, you really need to be able to do that without distraction if you can. There is actually literature to say that we actually work better. We can concentrate for about 40-45 minutes before our mind begins to sort of wander. So the way I've always done it is to do about 40-45 minutes, take a 10-minute break, get up, stretch, walk around, then come back and do some more. Try to write stuff down, be it in a notebook, be it on cards. Cards are quite handy because you can use them to test yourself, etc. But notes in a book is fine. But something that you can refer back to so that you can keep referring back as we progress through the coming weeks. Okay. And something that you can refer to that when you come to write your answers to your questions. Using pictures, diagrams, flowcharts, they are absolutely worth 1,000 words. Okay, so pull pictures off the internet, create diagrams yourself, you know, flowcharts, etc. They will vary. Tables are always very good because you can see across a table quite well. But they are really, really useful, and I use them a lot. Keep practicing questions, the past paper questions. So you can download, I think it's from 2020 to the current March 2024. They haven't released the November 24 paper yet, but when they do, I'll let you know, because it probably will be in the next week or so. I've got past papers that go back as far as 2012. One of the things you do see is that a lot of the questions through the last decade are very similar, but don't get it drawn into thinking that it's always the same questions that come up each year. It isn't. But practicing those questions and even more questions will help you get into that mindset of the type of question that they're looking for. When you're doing your questions, time yourself, practice timing yourself. See if you can keep to 10 minutes to do your section B. See if you can keep to 30 minutes doing your section C. There is the online exam system. There is an example online, which I'll talk about shortly, which will just check your computer, etc. But it also has some questions, and you can practice it, sort of typing out an answer to a question. So I would say the online system has been a major, significant change, positive change to the exam system. In days gone by, so certainly when I first started, we used to sit in drafty church halls around Hertfordshire, and it was very noisy. The neighbours didn't know there was an exam going on, and one year we had somebody cutting their hedge literally outside the hall window. It was really, really distracting. So when you're online, you can be in your own room, you can shut yourself off, you can close the windows, and then the distractions are minimum. So yes, so you do need to go on to the online exam system at some stage just to check that your computer is compatible with it. So this is the BBKA Learning Online system that's just been introduced literally within the last few weeks. So if you go through to this webpage, you will need your BBKA membership number to register. So that's the one that starts 103, 104 dot something. And then there's another number, and then there's another couple of numbers. Your membership secretary will know what that is if you don't, or if you've not got a record of it. Once you've registered, and there's no cost to register, but once you have registered with that, you can click on the Beekeepers link here, and then click on the Learning Online section. And that will go through to another area, another page that will say training sources for BBKA members. And the bit that I've selected to show you is the module study. And within that, there is the syllabus, there's the reading list, sample paper, and all the past papers that I've just talked about. A bit more info. There's some additional resources, and we'll talk about those in a second. There's even a document telling you how to run study groups. And they have introduced a module forum for each of the modules. I don't think the uptake for that has been particularly high. Currently, I registered with the module forum for this module last week, posted a question. I've heard absolutely nothing. It does say that BBKA don't monitor it. So I'm not sure how useful that's going to be. I think our own WhatsApp group may well be as useful, if not more useful. There is a YouTube video that was recorded in the spring 2021. A lady called Margaret Murdin, who's a past president of BBKA, leads it. She was also on the examination committee. I don't know whether she still is, but she certainly was at the time. Rather amusingly, it was recorded during the pandemic. One of the first things she says is, welcome to this online. We're hoping to return to doing face-to-face examinations. We are not returning to exams at local centres. It costs each county association money to rent them. I've already talked about some of the problems associated with it. So now the only face-to-face exams are held at 2 or 3 centres nationwide. So obviously that has implications for travel and accommodation, etc. So you are far better off doing the exam online, in my personal opinion. Spring Convention So that's the link there to that video. That's something for you to listen to. She does talk about Module 1 in detail. Just bear in mind, it is 2021 and the syllabus has changed. Margaret was very keen on the historical aspect of the syllabus. And as I mentioned just now, that seems to have disappeared from the 2023 syllabus. There are other resources that are available. Okay, one of the most useful are these study notes that were written by Master Beekeeper called Sean Stevenson, who's based in mid Buckinghamshire. Sean is on the examination committee. He wrote these study notes for himself when he took his modules. I think he finished his modules in 2012. They have been updated over the years, and actually they've just been re-updated again for 2024, which is great. You now have to register with Midbucks to download these. So I did that last week, and I said to the gentleman that contacted me that there would be quite a lot of people wanting to download the most recent version of the notes. He quickly said he was very happy for me to distribute those. So I will distribute those in the folder that I send out. This is a blog. The APRIS is a blog, a weekly blog, written by Professor David Evans from St Andrews University. So based up in Scotland. He is very amusing writer, but also sort of helps you understand the whys and wherefores of all the things that we tend to do. If you don't subscribe to that blog, I really recommend it. It's a very, very good read. But again, there will be topics in there that will be able to help you, particularly when we come to look at swarm control. He has some very good sections on swarm control, which will be helpful. Dave Cushman was a beekeeper some 20, 30 years ago who set up a website full, and I mean full, of information about bees and beekeeping. Sadly, he died, but his website is maintained. And those of you that have come across Roger Patterson, one of the things that Roger Patterson does for beekeeping is to maintain this website and keep it as an open resource. Interestingly, BBKA don't list the Dave Cushman website on their reading list, but I've learned so much from that website. If you don't keep your paper copies of the BBKA news, they are now all online, going back quite some time. And again, you can search it, you can download, and that's all available from the BBKA website. Again, you need your membership number. I think it's in those beekeepers resources section I showed you previously. And we'll have our own WhatsApp group. Right at the beginning of on the first slide, on the title slide, I put a QR code. There's a link there as well. And when I send out the slides, you'll have that QR code. So this is BBKA's reading list. And you can see it's pretty extensive, but they do put in quite small text alongside the reading list. You aren't expected to read it all. And actually, and Jen might have similar thoughts or different thoughts to my own, but some of the texts now are quite dated. So Ted Hooper is a very famous beekeeper from the 70s. And he wrote a book called Guide to Bees and Honey, which was first published, I think, in about 1974. It has been updated, and it was last updated in 2010 by Margaret Thomas, who's another master beekeeper. But actually, the only update in the 2010 edition was the section on Varroa. So, we had Varroa best part of 20 years by the time that book was updated. There's lots and lots of useful information in there. However, a lot of it is probably not current practice. So once upon a time, it would have been a go-to. I'm less sure it is a go-to. I think probably for this module, two more important booklets are the BBKA Guide to Beekeeping, which is the second edition, and potentially the Haynes Bee Manual. Okay, so we'll talk about, you can buy those. You can now buy those secondhand. If you haven't got an association library, you may have, but if you want to buy your own copies, look out for secondhand copies. So Northern Bee Books has a shop on eBay, as does this organization called World of Books. Excuse me. I bought both of these a couple of weeks ago for a total price of about 20 quid. And I think their retail price is probably you'd be getting nearer 30, 35 quid. And they're two very good books. I'm sort of halfway through reading this one. I've scanned through this one. But there are some very good illustrations. And Ivor Davis is a very good beekeeper. He's now at the National Bee Unit. So he's written it really well. Other books I'd recommend in here. The Bee Space to Beehive is a very good book. That will give you an historical perspective. So again, may not be necessarily for Module 1, but it's only a relatively thin book, but it is a really good book. I would avoid Clive de Bruyn's book. Whilst Clive de Bruyn is a very well-respected beekeeper, I think that's in his practical abilities rather than his written abilities, in my personal opinion. And then there are some books from Wally Shaw. There is freely available PDF online about swarm control, and Wally Shaw tends to focus on swarm control. I'm pretty sure that is available sort of online as a download. There are also these BBKA News special issue series, which vary between £5 and £10 each. They're basically previous issues. There might be some sort of sections taken out of a previous online or BBKA News, plus some ones that have been written specifically for the document. There are some very, very good ones. I've got most of these, and they are really excellent. The National Bee Unit website has recently been updated, which is great. Excuse me. And but those are also available as downloads. Okay. So we will come to those again. excuse me a minute. I'm going to have a cough and I'm going to turn my microphone off. Okay, saved you from that. Okay, so if you're thinking, actually, you've talked me into doing the exam in March. The way that you have to apply for this module is to contact Hertfordshire BKA exam secretary, Rob Croft, using that email address. You need to send that application to Rob before the 8th of February. And he said to me, please emphasize, we don't want people to wait for the last minute. Okay, because there's probably going to be quite a few people that want to take it. So Rob has to deal with that, but then also BBKA at the other end have to process it. So Rob emails you a link to the application form. You go online, you use that link to go online and pay. So the module costs £45 to take. And then you get a receipt to confirm they've got your application. And actually, something to remember, and perhaps pick up here, is the majority of people involved with the BBKA exam system are volunteers. So the folks that mark the exams, they are paid a very small amount per paper. Most of them have lots of other sort of voluntary roles or jobs that they have to do. There are very few people within BBKA that are employed. There are some administrators and what have you. But in general, the majority of people are volunteers. And sometimes things do sort of lapse a little bit. So it just doesn't happen as much as it used to. And I would say the exam system is definitely a lot sharper now than what it was back in 2013. But occasionally, it does take longer, or there's a couple of problems that sort of that are flagged. But just important to remember, I think. So this is the portal with some frequently asked questions. So that will give, is my computer suitable to run the examination? Is it invigilated? It most certainly is. The browser that we use for the exams is called Inspira. What if there's a problem during the exam, etc., and much, much more. Well worth going to explore that page if you're planning to take the exam module. There we go. So let me go through some of the questions. Okay, so I think the first one is from Simon. Why not starting with number one? I think because there are some modules that are slightly easier than number one. I think number two is probably one of the easiest. But I've been doing these online study groups for a few years now, and we have a group of people that have been right through with modules 2 and modules 3. So the natural one to go next was to go to module 1. But if I was starting again, I might not have started with module 1. But having said that, I did it on my own. I didn't have a study group. It was the first sort of theory exam I'd taken for 20 years. wasn't the easiest. I think having a study group around you, if you're going to take it, will help significantly. And the experience that we've got collectively of writing answers, good answers to these questions, helping you learn and revise those will set you off in good, give you a real head start.
Simon, can I add to that?
Yes, please do, Joe.
So this module, I did it like Simon. I did it in sequential order, but it's one that is predominantly based on your experience. So if you're limited in opening up their hives and doing sort of inspections, manipulations, then I would say it's a little bit early for you to sit the exam. It's all very well, and it's encouraged to obviously follow this course. But if you're struggling with only a couple of years of experience, I would think long and hard about doing this particular module.
Yeah, I think it can be, certainly your experience at the hive will help. Yeah.
From the BBKA is that candidates fail this.
Yep.
This is one of the ones that they fail the most because they take it too soon.
Yep, agreed. Agreed.
This is one of these. It's a double-edged sword. So it's one of those where you need to have the experience to a certain level, but then you better, like with all these modules, you've got to communicate it. And some people have the knowledge but can't communicate it.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about.
Yep. But if I would say if anybody did want to try it, we would encourage them to do so and help them as much as we can.
There's also a correspondence course.
There is, yes.
I'm one of the tutors. So it's not, when I say I'm a tutor, I could be a tutor for any of the modules. They haven't allocated them yet. So you can sign up, I think £70 for a correspondence course, and you can do any of the modules 1 to 7 at the moment.
Yep, the video is going to be available, Gavin. Yep. What is the usual pass-fail rate? That's it varies with the module. I would say, Marcelina. Probably the most challenging module is module 5, and that's because that contains a lot of biology, and that's the one that, and lots of long Latin names, and that's the one that people struggle with. But so people do fail the exams. I can't remember what the pass-fail rate is because I've not seen an examiner's. They used to provide us with an examiner's summary, but I haven't seen that for a while. And that could have been when Val left as the administrator. But yeah, I'd have to look that up without. I'll try not to. I don't want to guess, so I'll see if I can find the answer to that. Ian says, "Is it possible to change from in-person to online?" I don't know, Ian. You'd probably have to go back to BBKA to ask that question. If you go on to the FAQ link that I put earlier on, and that might give you an answer or might give you a contact. I know that you sent an email to Rob and John last week. So I'm guessing from that question that you've already applied. But you'd need to ask that at BBKA HQ. Would I be able to share the link? Yes, I will do. So the Facebook group, the BBKA Online is in the slides. I'll add the Facebook group. John, I would not go to Yates. I really wouldn't. It's quite out of date nowadays. And probably too much detail for what you need. So it hasn't been updated for some years. I wouldn't, and you notice Yates isn't on the BBKA reading list either. The mid-bucks notes, they do require a password, but I've got access to that, Ian. And as I mentioned, I will send those out. If one takes an exam to get experience and fails, is there a time limit to take it again? No, you can take those exams anytime, but there are only the 2 sessions a year, once in March, once in November. So in my own journey, I failed module 5 the first time, and I resat it the following year, and we set up a study group, and it helped significantly. I tried doing it on my own and struggled. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. So any other questions that folks would like to ask? Would the slides from last year's study session work as a good revision? The slides from last year, we didn't do module 1 last year, Emma. We did module 3 last year and module 2 the year before.
Can I
How do we prepare for next week? Okay, so let me show you what I've prepared for next week. 2 seconds and I'll find them. Just close that down. Okay, so week 2. So next week we'll focus on, as I said earlier,
Simon, you're not sharing anything.
Oh, aren't I not? Let's try again.
Yeah, thanks, that's fine.
All right. Okay, so next week we will look at syllabus sections 1.1 to 1.3. Okay. And you'll see this through successive weeks. I have gone back through all the past papers that I have, and I have pulled out into the 3 sections the different types of question from each of the years. Okay, so there's a question here on B space. There's a question on Smith Hive. There's a question here about naming a method for replacing brew frames all at once. Okay, I've done that right the way back. Then we go on to B questions, and then more on B, and then on to C. Okay. I've found some more resources, which I've given you there. And I will send these out tomorrow. So you will have those questions right through until next Tuesday to work through and start your study. So that...
Simon, can I add some points?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So Simon's very eloquently outlined the content and the syllabus, but some of you may have not taken exams for a while. Some of you are maybe quite au fait with taking exams. What I found, and I'm sure Simon would back this up, however well you know your subject, is a lot of it comes down to exam technique. So that's something you're going to have to work out for yourself. But what worked for me was starting with the preparation. So you've got, I don't know how many of you have looked at past papers, but there, as Simon said, there are 3 sections, A, B, and C. A are just 10 questions. Is that right, Simon?
Yeah.
Still got. So what I would do is go trawl through all the past papers and group all of the sort of questions from section A into sort of topics into a little spreadsheet and just basically go through them, and they would start the process rolling for me. I don't know how you were doing it, Simon,
And
similarly.
that's what I've done on the PowerPoints. So I've got all the questions.
And that sort of starts you off
Yeah.
You need to start if you're doing a module in, say, March, you need to have started by now, at least 2 3 months in advance. And that sort of gets the juices flowing and gets the knowledge going, and try and understand what they're asking you. And then when you actually sit the exam, what I used to do, and I sort of flitted between it, I used to go A, B, C, section A, then B, then C, but then I thought, right, I need to get the maximum marks basically down as possible. So I'd go from A quickly, just as a sort of get me going, and then straight into section C, 30 marks. And you got a choice of two, and I would try and get as many marks as I can on the board. And in section B, you got 4 questions of 15, and you really only have to answer 2.5 of those really well. So there's a technique, and the other thing that Simon mentioned is time. So it's 100 minutes. You're against the clock. You really haven't got time to think too much. So you need to know your subject, and it's not about waffle. Bullet points. I just use bullet points all the way through, basically, section B and C, and that's I think how they mark it. And then the other thing is just to understand how they do mark it. There's a marker and there's a moderator. So your paper will be marked by a marker, and then it will go to another person who will collectively look at all the markers, papers, and questions and formulate a mark. Basically, they may have missed something. And I was told by a senior member of the BBKA, John Hendry, that they want you to pass. So if you're close to borderline to getting the 60, they'll trawl through your paper and try and find an extra mark or two for you. They really do want you to pass. What else have I got here? The other good resource is B-Base. There's some good stuff on there.
Yep.
The MBU base information.
Less so for this module, I think.
Yeah, but there's still some good stuff on there that you can use. And I think there's a question about the correspondence course. I'm having some tutoring on that, or some in the next week or two. So when I get some more information, I'll pass that on to you. But this is about basically preparing in good time. So hopefully this course that Simon's put together will help you in whether you're looking to improve your yes, even for B, even for essays, Richard. Yes, bullet points for essays. They're just looking for specific
detail
points, basically.
Yeah.
So don't go writing War and Peace. They're looking for bullet points. They're looking for specific key phrases or words, basically. Yeah, it's just about, as I say, this one is more about, and people fail it because they take it too soon. They don't have the experience, and they're trying to answer questions without the experience they've got in their hands, so to speak. I did this one first off, and I didn't have much experience, and I was fortunate to scrape a pass. So that's it, really. That's me over and out.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. So I can tell you a little bit about correspondence because I've done a couple myself. So basically with the correspondence courses, you receive via email, not dissimilar to what we...
Simon, can I interrupt you? Sorry, it's changing. It's all going to be online now.
Yeah, yes, but you'll still receive your questions and your tutor will mark them. So it is a study system, but all it is, I say all it is, what it is additional questions to the examination ones. Okay.
Background, I think, more than
very
anything.
much.
It's
very
not.
much.
It doesn't mark the question for you in terms of giving you a score. It just gives you feedback on how you responded. Correct. and any sort of filling in the gaps, as I understand it.
Yep, that's right. Where did we get to? Okay. how do we prepare for next week? So I think when you get the question set through, you start your study, looking at those, looking for resources to find that information, and literally start to see if you can answer some of the questions just based on your experience to date of being a beekeeper. But there will be a lot of stuff online if you haven't got any textbooks yet, to be able to sort of to start that. How the online, so it's all, Richard, it's all the online, you get sent a link on the day, you go into the Aspera browser, there is a invigilator. The Aspera browser basically shuts down anything other than the portal to the exam. And they do, obviously they do check for people cheating, etc. It's done as professionally as they can. And you get that link a week or so before you actually take the exam. Emma, yes, you can take 2 modules each session. So if you're bright like Jem, you did 2 each session. I only managed to do 1 each session, but you can do 2. So you could do 1 and 3, you could do 1 and 2, you could do 2 and 3, you could do 1 and 5. Some people take 1 and 6 because there's a repetition between 1 and 6 in some of the parts of the syllabus. Sadly, Paul, no, the exams aren't open book. You are expected to recall the information. How many hours a week would you? That's an interesting question. I think that depends upon, Richard, your retention rate and your experience. Myself, I did at least an hour each evening, and probably quite a bit of a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon. But I don't have a particularly good retention of data. So the way I counter that is just by putting time into it. What is the date of the exam? It is the 22nd of March. That is in the slide, I think, John. But you have to apply, as I mentioned, at the latest by the 8th of February.
So I was going to say it's also the date of our AGM.
But your AGM, I guess, is in the afternoon, is it?
I'll have to have a word with Mr. Palumbo.
But yes, so the module usually you kick off. You usually kick it off between, I think it's between 9 and 12, and you get 100 minutes between, or is it 9 and 1? Might be 9 and 1.
9 and 1.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're taking 2, obviously you do 1 and then you have a short break and then you take the second one. If you're only doing 1, you can start anytime as long as you leave 100 minutes to complete it. Date of the exam, online study system. So if we do all available past exams and read around the subject from these, I guess that should be enough to pass. Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I have been keeping bees best part of 50 years, and I'm still learning. So I don't think you're guaranteed, but I think if you can do the questions from sections A, B, and C, and if you can provide those detail, you probably would be in a good position to get a pass. But there's no guarantee of that, of course, because as Gemma said, there's exam technique, which is really key for this examination. Are there any mock exams available to alleviate the exam jitters? No, there aren't. To my knowledge, there is that past paper, as I said, which is more about helping you get familiar with the Inspira browser. But I would say that each of the weeks that we do could be a mock exam. Okay, so because they are focused on a particular couple of sections each week, you could use those to check your timing and use it as a mock. So I would. Are we going to discuss the correct answers? So I think that's what the small groups are for, and I've not had time in the past to put together a sort of an answer set to the questions. I will see if I've got a bit more time now to do so. But I think that's the whole point of the small groups, is that you try to put together an answer to each of those questions together. And so, yes, you're right. Often there is some debate, but there will be a right answer too. Absolutely, Kate. As I say, the course is very much focused around, the module questions. So I'm sure you will learn. And what I plan to do is I will throw in some slides. So those of you that did the basic assessment last year, I prepared some slides on swarm control, for example. I will throw those slides in, and I've already prepared a table for one of the weeks that looks at the different hive types and things like that, which I've pinched and updated and adapted. So yes, you're very, very welcome. The aim is to try and help people through the exam, but as I said right at the front end, you're more than welcome to come here just as a learning experience. Any info sources that we should avoid? Be quite careful about American beekeeping websites. There's beekeeping in the States and the UK is quite different. We have a very different climate for a start, with perhaps the exception of scientificbeekeeping.com. So Randy Oliver is a very experienced beekeeper. He has a really, really good webpage. I'm not a great fan of the Yates books, as I mentioned earlier. Personally, I would avoid those now. Too much detail for what you need. You really do. Too much detail. And also out of date. They've not been revised. Any others, Jem, that you can think of that you'd avoid?
No, but I would say that the Facebook group for different modules is quite a useful resource.
Yeah. I'll send the links through for those.
But Yates, yeah, definitely it's got a helpful warning against it, I think.
Yeah. The Clive de Brum book, and I mentioned earlier, I have got a copy. It's quite hard going, and he's a great guy, great beekeeper. But as I said, I think his abilities are in his beekeeping rather than his authorship. But that's a personal view. Others of you might think, oh, actually, it's a really, really, really good book. It's a bit old now, and the style. How does it compare with Module 3? In terms of Module 3, the topics are very different. So Module 3 is pests and diseases. Module 1 is honeybee management. But the exams are supposed to be a similar level of difficulty, if that makes sense. But some of the modules will be slightly easier for you, or sections of some of those modules will be slightly easier for you, based on your own experience. So if you're completely new to beekeeping, as Jem said, you might find this module quite hard. But if you've got a year or two, then I'm sure you will benefit greatly from it.
I'll just add to that. So
Please do, yeah.
If you're thinking of sitting module 1 in the autumn, not in March, then obviously you can use this course as a sort of aid memoir and a learning process. But from the beekeeping season in spring, summer, then you can start implementing and practicing some of those manipulations and tasks and good hygiene practices that keep coming up, and swarm control, swarm prevention are the basis of this module. So if you are thinking in the autumn, use this course to sort of understand what you need to do and then practice these elements if you can in the summer and springtime. And then when you do come to the autumn, you'll be much better prepared and have a much better chance of actually passing the exam with flying colours and getting a credit or a distinction. If you're sitting it in the spring, but that's fine. As long as you know the basics, you may have already have the practical experience. So there's two ways of looking at it.
Yeah, very good point. Gavin, no, you don't need to do the basic assessment. It will certainly have helped if you have, because there's quite a lot of crossover of topics between the basic and module 1, but it isn't a requirement any longer. Okay, that was removed some years ago. Is there an age limit, Agnes? No, absolutely not. You can take the module. I mean, there are junior modules, but I think your boy is well capable of doing this. If we miss a Tuesday session, is it recorded? The aim is to record them, and I will send out the recordings. It's not going to be quite so. Because it's not a teaching course. The videos aren't going to be quite as helpful, I would say, because of course the recording will be of the small groups, which we will move into quite quickly each week. So the videos aren't going to be quite as helpful, but we'll see how it goes. But if you miss a Tuesday session, I will send out the questions regardless. So as I say, I will send it out to the 74 folks that signed up until they, the people that didn't turn up say stop. Yeah, if the sessions are recorded, where can we view them? I'm going to try and put them on YouTube. Okay, Diane Drinkwater gave me that idea. So, and then I'll send you a link to the YouTube video. See how my technical knowledge gets on. I may need some help. If you fail it in March, do you have to pay again to resit in the autumn? Yes, you do. So it's £45 per module, per occasion. Am I planning to run a study group for the basic? Not this year, I'm afraid. If we want to do the exam in November, do we just contact Rob later in the year? Yes, you do. So the cutoff date for the November exam is sometime in September. So yeah, Rob is your contact point. So you can. The other thing you can do is you can book the exam to go in March. You can then defer it. They used to charge you £10 to defer it to another occasion. I think you can still defer it. Sorry, somebody said something and I missed what they said.
Yeah, it was me, Simon. 2 points on that. Yeah, mid-September is roundabout, although that might change a little bit. And I have known people to defer it and got a full credit.
Okay.
But don't rely on that. Hope that helps.
Thanks very much, Rob. Okay. So any other burning questions? Let me, yeah, I think we've answered them all, which is great. So I hope we have encouraged you to come next week and to take part and to use this as a great opportunity to learn going forward. And if there aren't any other questions, we'll finish 10 minutes early, and then I'll start preparing the materials to send out. So last call for any more questions.
Sorry, Simon, you'll have to excuse Star Wars in the background.
No worries.
Is it the same link every week for this lecture?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
And I will always put the link to the Zoom call on the front page of the question set, so that you'll know. All right. Very good. Thank you ever so much for coming along. Thanks, Jem, very much for your really useful insights. And look forward to seeing you all again next week and delving into that first set of questions. Okay, take care and have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Good night.